Good morning, everyone. Today our team will present a really interesting topic of football. So when talking about football, I'm pretty sure that you are in this room has at least some clue on what football is, whether you play football or you watch football. This is because football is really popular nowadays and it has been well known worldwide. Especially to the English Premier League football, which there's that statistic for the years 2018 and 2019 that the audience worldwide is around 3.2 billion. So with this popularity, there is the significant pressure and expectations for each team in the Premier League, especially to the managers that they expect the best result. Also, manager is the one who has to make a decision to every move of the team. For example, selecting the lineup, selecting topics and tactics, and selecting formation and tactics, and also coaching. So with this big pressure, it appears that there are some times that managers made the wrong decisions, and the consequence of that affect their team results. So we believe that if the manager has some clues on their team performance on what formations or what the lineup should they selected to be played in the match, the situation of losing the game with wrong formation pick and also with wrong lineup selected will never happen. So this project aims to predict the result of winning and losing of the football matches. And we calculated this for the attribute or starting lineup comparing to other team lineup. Also, we taking some other factors such as formation plays, players attribute, and goalie attribute to account. For this project, we create the supervised machine learning to find first the end result of the match, second the pattern of how the team win or lose for the different attributes, player attributes. The third is that you will find the team attribute or formations that have advantage over other attributes. And the last one is we present the best and most accurate configurations or model in prediction. So our scope of work, so our analysis are based on the rating attribute from the FIFA that has players and goalkeeper. Also, the draw or tie results is excluded for the prediction method. And also, the data that we use the data set that has around that has 760 matches. So at the end, we predict the winning or losing of the EPL matches. So the setting of this is the football statistics from year 2018 to 2020, and also the player statistics from. Okay, so here's come to our data. So our data will based on mainly two things. One is the player lineup and the match results. And we get this data from the Rapid API. We bought this data because this data is really unique and really significant to our project, so we bought it and use it. You can see the red block that we put in the chart is the data that we use for this API. Also, we use another data of player attribute from the file CSV that we downloaded for free. And and here is the visualization of the team attributes that we get from the data. So this is also we create a web application for visualize.
Okay, for the methodology here, we start by using the Python as a programming language and use Google Colab as the notebook for coding. Starting by we have to install the dependencies and import them at the runtime. Like we have to import the JSON import kind, import request, and import pandas. The second thing is we need to setting up our database. In this project, we use the MongoDB as the medium between the JavaScript code, which is the visualization data that we showed before, and the actual data, which is the file. Then next step is to reading the layer in the Excel file. Moreover, we will create the helper function to call the unmatched name from the API and the CSV file. In the coding, you can see that the dictionary that we create, the key is the key name from the API and the value is from the corresponding key name from the CSV file. Next step is to computing the statistic into Mongo. We firstly setting up the API and calling it to get all the fixture from the specific league. In this project, we use the English Premier League season 2018 to 19 and 2019 to 20. In this information above, we will get the lines of both teams in home and away, and we will use it to find and retrieve the player stats from the CSV file, which is we will call it by using the jersey number. This part is to cleaning the data that is not irrelevant to the project, like the player nationality, the player net income, the player value nowadays, and collect only the stats that we need for like the attribute, like shooting score, passing score. And for this step is to train and validating the model. We begin by concatenating the two data sets from 2018 and 2019. We will train our data into 4 different methods. First is multi-layer perceptron. Second is support vector machine. Third is random forest classifier, and the last one is STB or gradient boost classifier. And this is what we coding, and this is the confusion matrix on the bottom. We will in this slide is the support vector machine. We will get the cross-validation accuracy around 71.06%. For the HTTP classifier, we've got the accuracy of 63.73%, and the random forest classifier, we got the cross-validation accuracy around 66.87%.
So next, we have set up the method that we use just now, and next we'll go to the experiment. So actually, we will have altogether 4 experiments, but actually we did more than that. So the first configuration we will talk about in our experiment is that we will use all the attributes of the home team and find the difference between the attributes of the home team and the away team by first excluding the goalkeeper. So the shooting score from the home team will deduct with a shooting score from the away team and so on and so on. Next, we did what Ken just said. We trained the data 80% and the other 20%. And also we did ROC and area, and also find the area under for each. So different to the experiment 1. In the experiment 2, we will also be excluding the goalkeeper. Okay. We'll be excluding the goalkeeper, but instead of finding the difference between the attack, between the shooting score and also the shooting score of the away team and home team, we will be combining dribbling score and shooting score as the attack score for the home team, and find the difference between the attacking score and the defending score of the away team. So we will have four attributes in total: the attack and defending, physical with physical, passing with passing, and pace with pace. And the rest are the same. Next, for experiment 3. This time we're including the goalkeeper, right? But we're still using the same method as we did in the last experiment, which is the attacking score will become from the shooting and dribbling, and also deducting with the defending from the away team. But this time we also have the score for the goalkeeper in the home team, deducting with the goalkeeper in the away team. Next, experiment 4. So this for our last experiment, we will, similar to the first experiment we did, which use the score head-to-head for each attribute. So shooting will be deducting with the shooting from the away, the pace will be the pace. But this time will be also including goalkeeper. I forgot to mention one thing is that we want to find the answer we want to find is binary, right? They will lose or they will win. So by doing that, we after we deduct every score we find a difference from every attribute, right? Then we sum it up together to see that. So the answer will be only yes and no. So we will be talking about the area under curve. So as you can see that the area under curve for the first experiment is around 6 for each method varies. So in the first experiment, the MOP will be at 68%, 68.14%, random forest will be 64.53, FBM will be 66, and the gradient boost class validation will be 57%. And this is also for the coding team, second experiment. And lastly, also for the third and fourth experiment. So as you have the MLP method, because from our validation, we think that it's the most consistent and also having not the highest accuracy, but the most consistent.
So these two graphs give the result that this from our experiment. It is a visualization of the attributes of teams looking at the correlation of whether the home team playing will win or lose against others. The blue points are chances of winning, and the orange points are chances of up against another attribute happening against each other. The chances that one attribute is favored over the other is So giving an example, the home team attributes for passing 70 and above, and the away team's attribute points for defending 5 and above. The possibility that the home team winning is higher, and the three goes to other attributes. However, losing would be the opposite. The away team's attribute being higher than the home team. There are also cases where there are no correlation. For example, for the home team's physical and away attributes. Away teams base attributes. Both are evenly spread out and have quite high scores, but there's no one. The accuracy for these two profiles only about 20%, therefore further improvement to the accuracy will require more focus. We move on to
for the output. So if in the situations that we know the lineup that the team will play for the match, we can predict whether the team will win or lose. So here is some code that we input the lineup of the teams and also the opponent teams. So at the end, we can see that the algorithms on our configurations are MLP, SVM, XGB, and also rainforest predict that the away team will win this match. So here is the output of our supervised machine learning.
Okay, so move on to the conclude of what we have learned from our project. So basically, the first thing is the design and during the experiments. So passing and dribbling are the two attributes which most effective to the outcome of the lab based on the output data that we got. Next is what we use for the visualization chart is the radar charts. So it is pretty easy to predict this kind of chart since the attributes for we started next is it hard to predict the outcome when the match cannot be related by one team. So for example, the match between the team that have the very similar performance. And lastly is the difference of the configuration between each experiments. So when we include or exclude the goalkeeper in the total attributes, so this difference is not affected to the accuracy at all. Next is the limitations of our projects. So since our analysis it all depends on the how people have given the scores to each kind of the attribute, and the usability of different attributes in the match that also cannot be translated in others to use for the experiments which might be affected. So the way that we can improve our project is we should understand more on how the attributes are related and find more factors that we are going to for our project.
So we are doing the prediction of the from the health and nutrition related. So this is the table of content. We have a introduction, data, experiment. This quote is kind of funny, so I put it right there. So you can die of the cure before die of the disease. So basically, what it implies here is that you have been misdiagnosed and you do the wrong opinion, you can also die. It is a serious disease. So the introduction. So why do we care about this topic, especially for the prediction of disease? So from the survey study conducted by DMJ already in 30 in the US, found that over 12 million adults like in the US each year has like received the misdiagnosis, which convert to 5%. Yet that number is not scary. What about like 1 in 2? Imagine like 20 people, like 20 adults go to doctor, and one of them receives this diagnosis. That can be more. Okay. And from 12 million, like an estimated number of 40,000 deaths related to the and these are the reasons for misdiagnosis. So the first one is from the patient itself that give some of the data to himself or herself. The second one is from the hospital, like due to the lack of communication, miscommunication, or and the third one is the limitation of the knowledge. This can be broad, like the knowledge of the doctor himself, and also the understanding of the patient, and like a unorganized thought can lead to this diagnosis too. Which is the third one is the biggest reason why the so this is our why we about this. So we think that in order to make the diagnosis like accurate as possible, we simply false.
Okay, so we're gonna go into the methodology. So what method that our group using? So first we start with data. We get the data from the health examination from the private hospital in the US. So it's from the UCI machine learning respiratory.
from the Long Beach and Cleveland Clinic Foundation. So we found out that attribution information is come from age, sex, chest pain type, which have 4 values, is typical angina, non-anginal pain, and asymptomatic. And the 4th is resting blood pressure. 5th is serum cholesterol in mg per dl, and fasting blood sugar, resting electrocardiography, maximum heart rate achieved, exercise-induced angina, and ST depression induced by exercise related to rest. And of the peak exercise ST segment, which value will come up upsloping, flat, and downsloping, and then lastly, the number of major vessels. So from the machine learning, we use decision tree, which example method to random forest, ADA boost, and bootstrap aggregating. Okay, at the first, we try to analyze the correlation between all of the attribution that we got. So we found out the positive correlation between chest pain and the target as the correlation topic. This makes sense since the greatest amount of the chest pain result is greater chance of having heart disease. Then CP is an ordinal feature with 4 values, which are typical angina, atypical angina, non-anginal angina, and asymptomatic. Moreover, the negative correlation between exercise-induced angina and our predictor. This makes sense because when you exercise, your heart requires more blood, but narrower actually slow down but flow. So at the correlation side, we only know that on the y-axis is the predictor of our analysis, and on the left side is the correlation for all along the attribution for each one. So we found out the correlation between all of them. So next, we found out the heart disease frequency between ages and sexes. So as the graph, we know that the zero number so it's too small, so hard to see it. So 0 is a female and 1 is a male, and red is have a heart disease, and blue is not have the heart disease. Next is the heart disease frequency between the FBS and the chest pain. So FBS we know as the fasting blood sugar. So analyzing the chest pain, we consider 4 types of value is the typical angina, atypical angina, non-angina. Next is the heart disease frequency between RBS and resting electrocardiographic. So the resting electrocardiographic measure will be 0 on the right side is known as the normal, and the first is having STT wave abnormality, and 2 is showing the probability or definite left ventricular trajectory by and this is show the relation in the scatter plot of between the thalassemia, cholesterol, and RBS. And next is the relation between the heart rate and the ages. So I know that on the heart rate of 20, this will get more disease. As we see that the blue is the dimension of the disease, and the green one shown as the non-disease. So we point out on the exploratory analysis of ST segment replication occurs because when we address and therefore realize if the trace is ST segment is actually low below the baseline, this can lead to the heart disease. This is supposed that plot above because low ST repression will be people at greater risk for heart disease, while a high ST repression is considered normal and healthy. The slope Q refer to speak exercise ST segment with value of 0 is upsloping, first is flat, and 2 is downsloping. Both positive and negative heart disease patients exhibit equal distribution of free slope categories. So next is just the positive patient exhibit a higher median of respiration level, while negative patient have lower levels. In addition, we don't see many difference between male and female target outcomes, except that the males have slightly larger ranges of ST depression. So we come out with the data that we plot in the scatter plot. The data is widely spread out. This indicates that the predictor we chose are probably not the best determination of heart disease. Moreover, the predictor might be correlated. Ideally, we would deal with it either by reducing dimensionally or by including more predictors or knowledge or by using more structured feature selection methods such as forward, backward. Let's ignore this step and then I'm being to restrict ourselves to two predictor and the stage of simplicity. The decision boundary is not a continuous curve. Therefore, conventional multilinear or logistic regression methods are likely to give the best result. Therefore, exploring decision tree model is a reasonable way forward. The third one is there are not many outliers as shown in the graph. So there is around like 2 or 3 data that is outliers. It is more important to be mindful of outliers because some models are greatly influenced by them. However, decision tree are not greatly influenced by outliers and they're not a matter of concern for now. Our first method that we're using is decision tree model. So as we show on the right side is some procedure code for the decision model, and the left side is some of the graph. So as we see that the training accuracy is about 0.7 and the testing accuracy is about 0.71. So how we build the decision tree? We build by a classification problem without getting too much into the details. Standard datasets have J predictor and K classes. To build a decision tree, we need a loss function which will determine whether a branching is possible. This is the leading filtration, which is usually either the classified color, Gini index, or entropy. The stopping prediction prevents the model from overfitting on the data. This could be heuristic based on maximum depth and minimum threshold of information we gain. So it turned out the best simple decision tree turned out to be the one of the just two branches, why we got 70% accuracy on the training others. So the next method is bootstrap aggregating. This idea behind bagging, so we know as the bootstrap aggregating as a bagging, so is to generate multiple bootstrap samples of same size as the given data, train separate decision tree on each sample and average the output from each tree to make the final classification. So as a result, we saw that is 0.96 for the training accuracy and testing accuracy as a 0.3. So while this model performed considerably well on the test with accuracy of 96%, it performed poorly at the test set. It's because the complex decision boundary produced by the example of set. This is counterintuitive because we expect bagging to reduce variance compared to the tree. The second, the model is no longer interpretable to draw back the bagging shares in the full method. The next method we're using is the random forest. The random forest performs very similarly to the bagging model. It overfit on the training data if we observe the decision boundary closely. We see regions with very few data points. This is because we were not controlling the maximum depth on each tree and the example like we did with our simple decision tree. So next is on the random forest, we will minimize the data. So as you can see, when we minimize the data, we training accuracy and the testing accuracy, which is similar to the decision tree at the first. So at the 70%, as we know. So the result we carry observed that covering the minimum number of leads in each tree limit depth of tree with calculation of about the 73% on the test set we have to performance is superior to our simple decision tree not right now. And lastly, we use the ADA boost. The ADA boost is an interesting result. It's the evidence of ADA boost gave us clarification that is very similar to our simple decision tree. One possible explanation of the data did not provide any further information required to reduce error predicted by our. So the result is quite similar to the decision tree at least 70%.
So in conclusion, like after like four methods we use, we come up with a version which is to calculate the use of the method of accuracy. As you can see in the graph, the runoff forest got the highest as like comparing to the breaking and fast breaking work almost the same as the runoff forest. Making the data like randomly without of whether the data is already trained or not. That's why random forest better than on for boosting like why boosting boosting because that's sorry that's that like maybe on the biggest one first and that's why making the again making the random forest and decision tree, well, random forest is like a method like on we're gonna need the result of the decision tree the random forest to make the result more accurate. So what's so for this project we hope that this algorithm will help users be more accurate and higher accuracy the algorithm is. We believe that will lower this level.
Hello everyone, we're from Team Campbell, and today we'll be presenting about our project of classifying X-ray images. So here's our team members. So may already know already. So our content today that we present. First, we go over the introduction, brief, background, and our motivation and objective. Then we go over the methodology and the result. Then we'll tell you a bit about the optical computer and mention about the work. So starting off with the introduction. So firstly, our background. So we first started to do a project on using X. How we changed it because we found that there was not a lot of real activity. And we found another data view to find all it has to do possible. Specifically, the classifying X-ray. So our main objective of this is to build the most suitable machine learning model with the high accuracy to classify chest X-ray images.
Okay, so moving on to the motivation. So first of all, coronavirus disease or COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. According to the statistics presented, there are a number of new daily cases and number of people dying from this disease. This shows how badly COVID-19 still persists in this world. And this is what motivated us. Currently, there are two main types of diagnostic tests used for this disease, which are molecular tests and antigen tests. Molecular tests such as RT-PCR tests detect the virus genetic material, while antigen tests detect specific proteins from the virus. However, no test is 100% accurate all the time. For instance, you may have the virus, but the swab may have collected from your nose or throat. The swab or mucus sample may be accidentally contaminated by the virus during the collection or analysis. And there are still many other factors that might affect the diagnosis process. COVID-19 is a respiratory infection. People with COVID-19 may have a cough, may have difficulty breathing, and in severe cases may have COVID-19. Clinicians use chest imaging tests to diagnose COVID-19 disease when awaiting RT-PCR test results, for example, or when RT-PCR results are negative and the person has COVID-19 symptoms. Most people with COVID-19 infection do not develop pneumonia. Chest radiography may be normal in up to 63% of people with COVID-19 pneumonia. But chest radiography of people who are seriously ill with respiratory system symptoms when they present to hospital can also identify those with COVID-19 pneumonia. Like other pneumonias, COVID-19 pneumonia causes the density of the lungs to increase. This may be seen as the whiteness in the lungs on radiography, which, depending on the severity of the pneumonia, obscures the wrong markings that are normally seen. However, this may be delayed in appearing or absent, in which the limited availability of expert radiologists to interpret the CXR images and subtle appearance of disease radiographic response remain the biggest bottleneck in manual diagnosis.
Full scope of the problem. When we focus on how to classify the prepared image using machine learning technique. So our group will be using prepared data of X-ray image, which can be classified into three types, which are normal lungs, pneumonia infection lungs, and COVID-19 infection lungs. So the reason we choose to use COVID-19 infection lungs to because it's a specific type of the pneumonia.
Next methodology. We divide our methodology to 5 parts. Identify machine learning technique, data preparation, create the model, and maintain the model. This is how we harvest our data. We have around 3,000 training images and 900 testing images. We label our data into 3 classes. First one, as you can see, is class normal. People who have normal lung without any lung disease. The second class is pneumonia, and the third class is COVID. Neural network has high level performance for any type of data. They are made up of neurons with learnable weight and bias. Each specific neuron receives numerous inputs and then take a weight sum over them. Weight is passed into an activation function and respond back with an output. Neural network suitable for image classification. Computer, as you can see in the picture, computer see images in pixels and certain group of pixels indicate age and color. CNN multiplies matrix of pixels with kernel filter and slide over next pixel until it covers the image. And then sum the value for that image and classify. This picture shows different layers of CNN. CNN is a great way to use deep learning to classify images. In this picture, we can see that there are many layers. First, we need our input data, which are our image data set. The feature map captures the result of applying the filters from each layer to input image. The model visualizes the feature map to gain understanding of what we are trying to detect from the model. And subsampling layers, it performs a local averaging and subsampling layers, reducing the resolution of the feature map and reducing the sensitivity of the output to shift and distortion. And then the last layer is the fully connected layer. It is the hidden layer and output layer of the CNN. This layer learns from the training data and classifies data set into the number of data preparation. We clean our data by resizing and copying, and then we need to handle the imbalance of images by creating classes that adjust the data set. For example, set input mean to 0, applying whitening filter, randomly rotate images in the way of 0 to
580 with shift high shift, horizontal flip and vertical flip.
This is how we resize and crop image into the same proportion for all images. Next, we will create a model, which in this case, we use sequential model from Class mainly in TensorFlow because it is easier. It is a basic linear model which is appropriate for same set of layers, and where each layer has exactly one input tensor and one output tensor. This is how our sequential model looks like. We will go deeper into each layer of our model. We will indicate the parameters for these following layers. The first one is our convolutional layer, or in this case, it is named conv2d. It is to deal with input images and it will convert image into 2D matrix using filters that apply according to image. We can adjust the number of nodes and the kernel size for this layer. The second type of layer that we use is the layer that we will normalize and downsample of the output from previous layers into the next layer, which is the batch normalization, the dense layer, and the max pooling layer. This will sum up the value from this and will normalize the output to like the edges between layers. So the last type of the layer we have is the softmax layer and the compile layer, which we use with equation fast categorical cost entropy. For this layer, we will normalize the output to a probability distribution over output classes, and this fast categorical entropy will give the output as the number of classes from 0 to 0 1. From the layers that I already mentioned, there are some activations that we use and are significant, have like significant impact on our performance. The first type layer is the logistic function, which in this case we use both sigmoid and ReLU. First is sigmoid. Sigmoid and ReLU are both logistic functions that produce the output as probability, but the sigmoid will produce the output of between 0 to 1. And the value of x is larger than 1 will be changed to 1, and the number that is less than 0 will become 0. So this will vanishes the gradient of the probability. So we also apply the second type, which is ReLU or rectified linear activation. This is the piecewise function, so it will not vanish gradient as if x is more than 0, the slope will be 1. So this requires less computational task because we can compute the value of y easily when x becomes more than 0. So the last type of activation we use is our softmax. In the compiler, we utilize a logistic function for multi-class classification. This is some of our CNN model. You can see that we have about 17 layers with more than 700,000 parameters, both trainable and non-trainable ones. So the fourth step of our methodology is we train the model with train data to let it update each parameter, and we set the number of epochs for the classes. We need to adjust and fix the number of epoch sets until the losses and accuracy of each epoch become consistent. As you can see from the graph, our last epoch from 15 to 20 is like a linear graph. We then test the model with test data and get our results.
Moving on to our experiment results. Firstly, we visualize the performance of the machine using the computer. As you can see from the matrix, the model is actually quite accurate in this side, especially when classifying the second class, which is the COVID. The accuracy from the last epoch of training was 92.8%, which is considered to be highly accurate for climate and machine learning.
This is our brief classification test report on the model, indicating precision and recall. This is our ROC and AUC, another visualization that we did to show and measure the performance of the machine. ROC is a probability curve, and AUC represents degree or measure of separability. It basically tells how much the model is capable of distinguishing between classes. The higher the area under curve, the better the model is at distinguishing between normal, pneumonia, and COVID data. Moving on to our obstacles. Our main obstacle we found out was that initially the machine couldn't classify the COVID class properly. This is due to underfitting issue. Underfitting is caused by too few data samples for COVID, which made the machine unable to learn what COVID looks like. And machine is not able to distinguish between classes and put everything in normal class. Our solution was to balance data with balanced data generator, which will resample the image and balance all classes of data in the training model. We clone the existing data set of the class that has less data than other class, which is the COVID-19 data set. We only have around 400 images compared to pneumonia and COVID, which have a lot more than COVID class. That creates imbalance of the model, and it is difficult to predict COVID with this amount of data. Next, we increased the amount of epoch from 12 to 20. We added more dense layers and removed dropout layers. So lastly is our conclusion. So how well can determine whether it is normal lung, pneumonia, or COVID-19? So our accuracy is this is our future work. We aim to increase the accuracy of the technology to be able to screen and and we also hope to apply next is our mission. We need more what is the last thing is COVID is new disease, so there's not much time. So the main application for our model is in the healthcare. So this model can be used to be able to screen perfectly normal lungs, pneumonic lungs, lungs infected with COVID-19, and for future work that you'll be able to screen other diseases. So lastly, our key takeaway from this. The firstly is how to make the model go from underfitting to overfitting. And also actuations in each layer, such as differences in the sparse category. Also, thirdly, the oversampling method. And lastly, different layers of the model. Thank you. Are there any questions? Underfitting, right? So firstly, we balance the data with the balance data, which will resemble the image and balance all classes of data. And we increase the number of controls. We added more dense layers and removed dropout layers. Finally, of the underfitting.
Same time. So we use X-ray, right? Yeah, we use X-ray images. But we know that people don't. You mean like the heat detection of the human body, right? We haven't tried, but I think that it is not suitable for communication because I think heat in our body has changed all the time, and I think it like really depends on like the disease.
About evidently that the procedure, I would like to add that where do you think that the or the what pictures do the machine that we or there are like parameters for like how big the
For the details of our picture, in the process of painting our picture, I think I pick all of the differences in each picture. For example, like the size of the picture, the proportion, the size of the body, or the white tinting. So I think that the most challenging picture that would be for the COVID and the pneumonia class because like both are about the infection of the lungs and COVID can be classified as one type of pneumonia as well. So I think that the tissue pattern in the pneumonia and COVID are similar.
when we identify normal compared
Yeah, because actually like
when we add alcohol outside and like the accuracy within that like pneumonia very similar. And that and is there like a time like right maybe like need to be around like 1 week or 2 weeks one
the pictures for COVID classes were obtained from different sources. Like we had about 5 sources, and I think that it covers all the time, and it does not it does not say something that is specific for the duration of COVID or like the phase of COVID. I think that the pictures help. The pictures include all phases. Any more questions?
So the pneumonia is one specific type of COVID-19 is like one of the specific types of pneumonia. So we want to compare.
Any more questions?
Okay, I'm going to talk about 20 minutes or so of that to the project and the efforts in general as well as the team. Then afterward, I'll talk about 5 discuss the version. Right. So first of all, good. I'm okay. I'm very satisfied with the outcome. It's very clear that the teams that did well were the team that got an early start. What I mean is, once you get an early start, you can run into conflicts or problem or obstacles. Then you can come to me or the PA. And that's really what I was hoping for. Meant this to be a hit. Project, not meant to be the test of your ability to deliver a well executed final project. That's not what it's all about. So you got an early start on the project, immediately the first after we start talking about the immediately go into literature survey, trying to find a methodology, sort of really platform, and then obviously you will run into problems, run into issues, and then you can come to me. Then that will guide your shape your project. I think that's that. The teams that didn't do well were the teams sort of like you started late or something. Just sort of like went on their own to formalize the approach, the data set, the question, sort of like pretty much without guidance. And I had no way of helping, way of creating your business. Yeah, so that's the first one. So I think with the project, the quicker you jump into it, better. That's always. Even if you end up throwing away 90% of the fact that you stop, you dive right into it, very early on, okay? That also, it's not just your own effort, your consultation. Okay? You guys are not going to have this kind of opportunity of working with. It's as if I was offering to coach you guys on a very big process and big I'm gonna talk to you again graduate and go to okay. So for those that took advantage of this, being a result with PA early, that certainly pays off. That certainly pays off. Okay, so that's the first comment. So like you get more the more earlier you come in. That really shows. Second comment. I think presentation wise, you guys are okay. You're really good. You've got a good right balance. Variously, you have 4-part or 5-part presentation, but generally presenting the right kind of mix. Starting some kind of introduction, some kind of motivation, why it is you're addressing certain problem or certain analytical practice. Go into sort of formulation, which could be heavily focused on prior literature survey, it could be focused on the type of data that you are trying to work with. Focus would be on what data you are trying to massage and insights from, or your formulation could be focused on the machine learning approach. And then you go to the experimental setup, experimental results, and then the main crux of this is the conclusion. Now, some of you are very good in terms of balancing, trying to show what analysis you can perform from the very beginning. In other words, once you do the exploration, you can immediately start to analyze the data just from visualization. Now, of course, some of the analysis that you do there will be premature. But it's good to sort of like start trying to analyze as much as you can along the way. So maybe, by plotting, doing a scatter plot of 2 variables, you sort of like try to make analysis very prematurely that these 2 variables are positively correlating to each other, therefore it's important. But maybe as you go down the line, you run the machine learning, you realize that the variable that you thought was significant is not. Yeah. So this is something that I think in your presentation would add to the attractiveness when you present ultimately whoever answers the problem. In other words, it's a journey of insights accumulation. Yeah. and you sort of like telling the story of how much you insight you get from the beginning, just from the fact that you have to find out that data from macro or suicide or health is very different from different countries and so forth. So a lot of this, you don't have to wait to the end. Make it sort of like make the analysis, make the point, make the journey known to the audience. And of course, the main analysis story is delivered at the end. And there's no reason why you couldn't along the way. It's a little bit of insight that could be something sort of by the way surface. And this, funny enough, turns out to be a lot of pickup points that you get from real projects. Sometimes, I mean, in my professional life, it's very clear. I make the plan very clear. I want to get to this point, to this point, to this point, to this analysis, X, Y. But in the interim, there's some feature about the data that I observe. Well, it turns out a lot of this incidental insight in the observation, actually ends up being very critical. And the end is we go back to this bit and actually form off another line of inquiry. So this happens in real life. And it's going to happen more and more because with data analysis, the idea that you're formulating the problem as you go along and revising the intention is very relevant, very common. Okay? As long as the motivation is clear, right? You got to say, well, we kind of like taking this direction, but we go the other way because it's too hard. That's like that. Yeah. But if you're sort of like going along and you found out that there's a certain pattern that hasn't been while you're doing the data cleaning, transformation, agent detection, you realize there's something very interesting there. That could then not be the entrust of your consultancy or your project. That happens as well, right? So learn that. Third point is, I actually grade you guys on the amount of learning I guess you learn from this. And so even if you have a lot of failure or missteps, false beginning in your project, it's okay as well. Yeah, as long as you actually make a point that teaches you something. Yeah, and are good as long as you do. Presentation wise, the actual formal presentation, I guess you guys haven't really done any formal class, something like that. So there's a lot of awkward moments. That's why I asked you guys to do first. Yeah? Think of this as a professional pitch. Yeah? Come up, you have an orderly way who's going to be your guide, who's going to be number one, so that your methodology person. Make it professional. Dress professional. You guys were wearing sandals. Probably, I was wearing sandals today. Anyone in the team wearing sandals, you're probably not going to get it. Okay? When you go in real life, the idea is that you're not just selling your idea, you're selling courtesy. Okay? If I'm going to pay you for $1 million worth of consultancy, and you couldn't be bothered to make a say good presentation without just handing in something instead of handing in something with a handwritten. Right? You're not trying it. And presentation is important. It's not that presentation is substance, but presentation is a signaling. Okay? And I do that as well. Some project that I don't really care to do, I just communicate. I wouldn't show so much care. I can do it. Right? And I can certainly not be very enthusiastic. Project that I think are not that critical. Well, I'm okay to do it. Yeah, but I'm not bending backward. You guys are different. You guys are at this stage where you should be bending backward with any pitch, any project. You haven't built up any experience. Yeah? Like Well, I guess you guys are familiar with like movie actors and stuff like that, right? So somebody who's like Sean Connery or dead, you know, roles come to him, and he decides whether or not he wants to. And when he was young, when he was your age, he was probably, you know, trying to get any part he wants, any part he can. That's why if you look at all the established Hollywood actors, you look back when they were in their teens, they're probably doing some toothbrush commercials. Yeah, they could be like Oscar winner, well respected in the Hall of Fame. But when they were young, they were willing to do anything. They were willing to do anything to get the product. You find them in, you know, toothbrush commercial or whatever. Okay, so that's that. Now, project-wise, now let me make some quick team by team comments. Right. Let's start with nominal. Okay, nominal, you struggle quite a bit. I think from a management, project management perspective, you were too on the fence. You know, you were like, oh, should we do this? Should we do that? And then you waste a lot of time. Okay? In the end, you got something there. Could be worked out a lot more. You just immediately go through, you know, cluster analysis, trying to make predictive model, come to PA and say, oh, who got this? Let's get that. What can we do? What should we do? And that's when you start on your first job, you're not going to lead the project. Yeah? You're not going to lead the project. You're going to be a junior member. Now, a junior member looks like this. Very well capable of programming. And he knows how to use all the scikit-learn library, right? But doesn't really know how to formulate a problem. So a lead data scientist will say, okay, let's try this. Go run an experiment. Okay? And you come back with results. That's what a junior data scientist does. You get out of that junior quicker, if you are more proactive. So instead of, you know, just sort of like say, oh, what do I do? What's my assignment? You just go ahead and try your own problem formulation. Some can be very silly. Okay? Some of the ideas that my team member came up with could sound very silly. But I don't care. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I can put X and Y together and create a model. Now, even if I knew, I kind of like had a hunch, at least that's nothing acceptable. Even if I knew that this is something I need to obtain, time is pressing, I would say, that sounds, it's a good idea that you're thinking about it. From my experience, chances are this would be try something else. If time is not the essence, then, you know, it would probably be better if I say, oh, go ahead and try it. And then you find out that, yeah, this is it. So yeah, I think you wasted a lot of time coming up with back and forth. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think we came up with something very solid. The presentation is a little bit hard to see, especially if you're doing a cluster of countries. You might as well just use one color for one cluster of countries. Okay? And your presentation would have gone much better if you came up with some kind of pattern. And you were hinting on that, you know? Things like people in Myanmar worked a lot with something like that. Just give a little bit of a cohort context, not just Burma. That was similar to that. Okay? To be somebody, Zambia, something, and that would be interesting. Okay? So a bit short of narrative, which is what you need when you're trying to sell anti-bias insight. It's not, you're not selling accuracy table. Okay? You're selling association, you're selling pattern. The more narrative you can build around it, the better. Okay. Kaleidoscope, right? kaleidoscope is the moving pen. Now, again, if your team got an early start on this, and maybe came to me or the TA, we would have told you right away that you can't really just do analysis based on logic. Yeah, you can visualize it, you can surmise. Yeah, and again, and that's the insight that I told you. You know, you plot it and you say, okay, well, this looks like this. Maybe it's that, but it should be qualified with maybe what happens. That should not be the end of your analysis. Yeah, you can't say it's obvious this is after COVID. You don't know that. Yeah, you don't know that. Even if you plot two variables, guys. Even if you plot two variables. Okay. Even if you plot two variables. Okay. This guy goes up, this guy goes down. Can you tell that they have negative correlation? Well, if this was last year and all you knew was correlation, yes, you can say that. That's negative correlation. Okay? But we know now about effect of nonlinearity, effect of interaction. How do you know that this thing is not due to other factors? Right? And if it weren't for this, okay, if it weren't for this, okay, so you can say this is negative correlation. Actually, let's say that because of this, it's actually positive correlation, because due to other factor, it would have gone this way. Right? Due to other factor, correlation, right? So you can't just plot two lines, right? You can do everything in Excel, you shouldn't be here. Okay? Okay? Go to high school for that. It could be that with the absence of this thing, the line would have been even higher. Right? This positive correlation is because this thing takes a nosedive, so this thing gets lower. Right? It looks higher because everything was pushing it. Okay? Now this is perfectly linear. I'm not invoking a nonlinear relationship. I'm just saying there are other variables. So there's a lot of analysis. You have to have the discipline, right? You have the discipline. You can't make quick conclusion. You may from looking at the data, but then you can say, is this hypothesis supported? Then you do experiment. Then it becomes okay. Okay, but if you stop there, you are only at data exploration phase. Okay. So if you come to, you know, again, the DA or me, we would have flagged that right away. 1-1 got up on it's an example of a good effort that you got started early. But I would imagine that your momentum kind of like got exhausted trying to do this object recognition. So the level of depth of analysis kind of peters out at the end of the loop. Yeah, it's fine. This is fine. And that's what you should learn from it. Yeah, you should learn from this. Learn from this. You can say that, yeah, what exactly is the dragon you're trying to slay? Yeah? And maybe you get so caught up in the beginning. And that happens a lot. And most projects are a little bit like that. By the time you get to what you want to do, you get kind of exhausted with all this fooling and all this stuff in the beginning, right? Now, which is fine, it's good. It's a good learning experience. But that's what you should learn from. Okay? In real life, you will get stuck. You need 50%, 60% of the time before you actually get somewhere. And so this big hurdle of getting to where you want to be, and then you just have like half a slide left for what you got started doing. That happens. Again, I'm not looking for success from a complete project, but if you learn from this, it's good. Learn from this. Yeah? This thing is platform, you have to make, and I like your distinction of trying to do this thing with data, with Google, whatever, yeah. Software recognition, the mathematics, but take a long time, and you eventually found the right set combination. That's important. That's a skill that's not obvious from looking at the lecture. But that I hope you learn from that. Again, I'm not looking for the quality complete project, yeah, but it's the effort and finding in making decision. I like to see the evidence of decision making along the way. No music. Again, music. If you came to us, we would have planned this thing as well. Okay? You can't just say that bad words go up and crime rate goes down, so it's not related. How do you know that? Okay? Now, my answer would probably be, yeah, maybe it's a little bit too far-fetched to say that bad word causes crime, but you haven't proven that in the analysis, right? Because it's not controlled. I mean, you could say that crime has gone down because of GDP has gone up. Okay, how do you know that crime would not have gone down even more if you didn't have bad words in music? I don't know, right? It's not proven. Okay? None of this is about just making sense. Ironically, that's the obstacle. That's the hurdle you get to realize when you find something that makes too much sense. They'll say, "We didn't need to pay you for this." But when you came up with something that runs contrary to that intuition, then they will not believe it. But that's the trouble with being a data scientist. It's part of the job. You have to be convincing that your methodology is sound and your insights are warranted. Yeah. So the final judge is not, does it make sense? Yeah. It makes more sense that the world is flat, as far as I know. Okay? In my life experience, I haven't had, let's say, I'm just been walking. So it makes a lot more sense that the world is flat. But I haven't proven that by walking around. Same thing. It's the idea that you have to make sure that whatever you think is proven in your methodology and your experiment. Okay? The money ball. Okay? The money ball would have been a bit more interesting. By the way, you should have excluded the pies. Yeah? You can speak it in. Okay, so you should present both, right? Again, it's a very interesting thing. If your objective is to win, and you include pies, it actually makes the target, so like you look at it as a more biased because you're not measuring the right thing. But you might reduce the variance. This, by the way, guys, I tell you this is something you will run into the rest of your life. Okay? One compromise, again, is risk and return. That's all. But one compromise you will run in all the data analysis is bias versus variance. Okay? Now, we didn't talk at length about this. Presumably, you had a little bit of that in the statistical analysis. But there's also concept of bias and variance in learning in general as well. We didn't really cover that, but there's always a trade-off: overfitting, not overfitting. So this kind of thing is very interesting. Your presentation would have been more interesting if you actually isolated case where winning is not from dominance. Right? You're trying to present general result of winning and accuracy, which is fine because you do have ground truth, right? So your project is easier than, let's say, trying to build a narrative about suicide, because you actually have numbers that you can say accuracy is this percent, that percent. But it would be a lot more insightful if you actually try to isolate different narratives between winning by dominance and winning without dominance, but right passive, like certain combination. Right? Certain combination beat the other combination, even though overall the scoring is low. Yeah? And maybe you ran out of time, but it would be nice if you would expand on the Foley's practice a little bit. After all, you have another 6, right? It's not 1. But, oh, okay. So I thought just add like an overall scoring for Foley's. So okay, 6, 6. That's okay. So let's say that would be okay. It's good that you have, because you started early. You had time to run, and then you were asking me or PA last week about the setup. Then we suggested 5 different combinations. So we had that, right? Now imagine if you didn't come to us, we would have just come up with one experimental set. We're done with it. That would have been a big challenge. But LOSME. LOSME is disease prediction, right? Now this team is pretty good because it's only 2 person, right? All right, 2 guys. Yeah. So it is pretty good. And you've done a lot of kind of visualization. Would have been better if you had time to sort of edit your own presentation, because it was just like a series of graphs. There were a lot of them. Okay, there were a lot of them. There's violin graph. There's a plot. There's a scatter plot. I think if you have a more structured presentation of what you want to get across, and let the charts and plots support your point, it will be good. It seems a little bit more like you were generating a lot of plots, and so you have to just sort of go through them one by one. Okay? And this would have been great when in a working session, right? Because by going to a whole bunch of graphs, looking at things from different perspectives, the working session will point out what kind of hypothesis or what kind of test, right? So that would have been excellent. It was like, let's say, the initial visualization and during the work period, you just show to the class, and the class say, oh, what does this graph say? Oh, let's suggest some kind of hypothesis to test on this. Male, female, age, we have, I think at some point. Maybe if you presented it to class, somebody would have said, hey, is age a real factor you should put in? Yeah, it would have been an excellent working session. Yeah? I think you left it a little bit late, so in the end, you just sort of like describe it. The graph, the plot should support your presentation. Okay? Yeah, the visualization serves 2 purposes. One is for you, right? You come to grip with the nature of your data, so you can start modeling or hypothesize. So the visualization is for you, right? But once you build the model, build the narrative, make the conclusion, make the analysis, the visualization is for us. Okay? What you were showing was a little bit more of the visualization for you. But it's good. It's good. And I think there's only 2 of you, right? 3 ยอด. Okay, 3 ยอด. I think it was a little bit rushed at the end because you did the switch, which is fine. I have to give you credit for making that presumably not so easy decision. Again, I'm not looking for completeness. I'm looking for learning experience, and I hope you learn from the tricky. I think you learn a lot more from the than the thing you ended up with. You see the difficulties, the data, the readiness, and in the beginning you were thinking about prediction, from looking at the structural and then, well, it's not the structural, it's the fact line. Oh, it's not fact line, it's actually a feature or blemish or surface or, that sort of thing. That was good. I like that. I really enjoyed it. You started right away. Okay, to me, it's good. The fact that we throw away is okay with me. I have no problem with that. Okay? Now, with the project you ended up with, I think that what I like about it was your decision to make it a two-way classification. Okay? Would have been nice if you actually benchmark it with a two-way classification, disease, non-disease, and then separate the disease and or we did get a lot of, and I think you spent a lot of time describing convolutional neural network. Would it be better if, well, it depends. If your client, if your audience doesn't know convolutional neural network, that would be. But assuming that this class, they already studied convolutional neural network from the lecture, it would have been a lot nicer if you spent a bit of time on the pre-process part. Because this, this thing, you mentioned a little bit, scaling, resizing. But we have other things as well, right? We have this kind of augmentation is generating. That's interesting. What does it do? Does it just add noise to existing data, or does it just do some kind of picture shift? There's a lot of things there. I think that's quite interesting. Kind of oversampling the negative, sorry, the positive case in a very rare disease. By the way, where did you get the data again? I haven't missed that. Okay. Okay. We had a little bit of diagram that would have helped. Okay. And all my comments are going to the final report. Okay. So it's okay that you don't have homogeneous data. It's not like you walk into the Johns Hopkins and they curate the data and they put it on cable or GitHub and download it to everything. Now, we have to piece things together. That's good. By the way, in terms of data-wise, I think the one that I like in terms of data sourcing was actually the music guy. One of the things that I like about the music was you were actually having to do a few source. One on the music database, one on yeah, I think so. Because you have to do, this rating as well. So patching up multiple sources is good. Okay? It's a good lesson to learn. Again, once again, what I like about it is the journey it forces you. Okay? It's okay that you locked out, you walk into this data repository, download it, start doing analysis. That's okay as well. Right? I mean, you invested in, and you have to pay your money for data set, that's fine. But you also learn a lot from patching different bits of things. And this, would have been great if you put a lot more emphasis. Because you have to do a lot of patching. This data incompatibility, that's good, that's part of life. That's the best thing to learn, guys. Okay? So, overall, again, I'm very happy that you went through some of the pain. I'm never disappointed in terms of result, but I would be a bit more disappointed in terms of engagement. For example, like I said, you started this project late and you sort of like went on your own and came up with something. It was too late for me to make any suggestion or then you're probably not learning as much. But if you start diving in right away, immediately trying to take control of the project, even if you ended up, well, you probably threw this away last week or something. Yeah, that's fine. Now, in real life, you don't have the luxury again. In real life, if you are commissioned to do defect analysis, and say, okay, I'm just going to do a lump picture for you. Yeah. So this is some luxury you have as a student. In real life. But in real life, you will have similar, I wouldn't say salvage. Yeah, I can say salvaging analogy. In other words, you try to go from A to B. You can't get there. But once again, maybe something along the way prompted you to a more insightful discovery. Maybe there's some pattern of data that you discover when you try to reprocess. And this can become the analysis that's actually more useful than what you formulated. And you communicate this clearly, yes, and you make sure that your clients or whatever who wants to work it understand that, yeah, you're doing this good way. It's not that you run into difficulty and you say, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, well, you certainly have to win that trust. Again, that trust comes on day one. That trust comes on day one. You know, I'm always right underway. So everything, presentation, fonts, yeah, your tone, your voice, how you present, how you dress, everything, all this. But I would imagine that in the 4 years that you are here, you probably have more. That's not really mine. But again, you have to win that trust. And it's not just the ability. Okay? You have to convince them that you care. You can convince that your clients that you care to do this project. So professionalism doesn't mean you do what you pay for. Professionalism means you use the best of your training, your expertise, to genuinely offer a real solution to your problem. Okay, now, briefly, I just want to talk about the exam, I guess. Once again, you know, it's not possible for me to do a lot of calculation or equation solving. Maybe I would be able to do a little bit of that, but that. You guys had the first experience of exam that that I mentioned, conceptual, understanding the concept. Now, a good student, I didn't tell you this, a good student would have immediately, while the questions were still fresh in their mind, redundant the answer or now you saw some equation some 12 questions. Right? You knew which one you did well, which one you didn't. Yeah? Don't assume that I'm just going to use this example as one. Maybe the question that you didn't do well that evening, you knew you didn't do well, you went and immediately studied up on that. Okay? And I can ask you that same question again. That is not how good of an answer it is to get me. It's how much of an improvement over the last time you didn't do so well. Yeah? But if you think of exam as a one-time thing, okay, fine, I didn't do it, blah, 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 then you're not learning much from it. Yeah? Learning from your shortcoming, one of the most successful strategy I have. Yeah? Easy, but you know, it's certainly easy to learn from. You have a lot of it, but you're not learning much. Okay? Learn from failure or learn from shortcoming, not failure. Okay? Failure is where you don't care less, fail. But if you care and you fail or you couldn't achieve, it's a shortcoming. Okay? You're trying your best, but it's short, it came up short. Study that. That's my strategy. That's my lifelong. So, you know, you do that. So, now what I would like to do, and I give you a hint that this should be something that you should be able to answer in class. You should be able to have like some kind of mental map. Try to think about it. What was the organization? You know, I can guarantee that there is an architecture, there's a design to the public. Why is this public here? Where is this public here? The public is in the last part of the class, and the early part of the class. How they tie together? Okay? Look at the mind map. Okay? Now, it would be a lot of, well, I don't know if this is fun to do, but if you actually look back at 14 lectures, that's 14 lectures. Starting on 14 numbers, right? This paper, arrange them on the table. What leads to what? Others 1 leads to 4. Others 3 goes back to 2. Okay? Have that. Good mental math. Now, in a more calculating class, you know, a class like physics, when I was a student, when I was a graduate, my major was physics and economics. The physics teacher had this clever idea of saying you are allowed to have 1 piece of paper for an exam. Now, the nice thing about it is when I try to summarize what I learned over the entire semester, in one case, I can see where things fit. So in quantum mechanics, you say, okay, we found this kind of wave function. Oh, with the issue, we found some kind of boundary problem, we're trying to solve it. Yeah. So one page of quantum mechanics, one page physical mechanics, one page solid state physics. And when I did that, I could see how pieces fit together because it's not one. Yeah. Now, this class, you're not being asked to do like equation that not so much anyway. Maybe a little bit of that on the machine learning. Okay. So I'm not saying there won't be calculation or function or way to do that. I'm saying that there's not so much of it that you would do that one page. Yeah, but I would do that. In fact, this was a tradition in my school in physics department, but not in other departments. So I think if I remember correctly, the economics department didn't do this. So I couldn't have a one page cheat sheet to go to economics exam. But I would use the same technique. I would pretend that I can have 1 piece of paper, get to the exam. And I would prepare that. That's what I would take. But I would use the same techniques in the physics department. Okay, so that's that. Finally, I'm going to be giving you guys a couple of papers, okay, that you will be able to read, digest, make a synopsis, and this will be something okay? So I'll be sort of like giving you 1 or 2 or 3 over the next couple of days. Okay, do that, and I will also have a question that has 7 parts, and you will answer the part that corresponds to your group. For example, I may have a question that has to do with one part. Okay, then you answer that. Okay, you should do that. You should be answering. Okay, so there should be a question about, you know, something I want to clarify about why you did this in the project. Also deal with this technique, and you just choose the one that's relevant to you. Okay, and so you might have to do something like a circle. This is my team. Okay, good. So good luck, and I hope it's you haven't learned much. Yeah, yeah. I can stand here, you can sit there. Yeah. So next week it would. I may not. I don't know if I have to be here. It will certainly be here. Okay. I might after the exam give you back the. Good. So I hope it's been fun, and know that you haven't equipped yourself yet. Okay? There's a difference between learning and equipping. We're not well equipped to do data science project yet, but you have learned what it would take, and hopefully you would learn where you came up short. That's the best thing you can learn. Okay? Good luck with the exam and have fun.